So today we figured we'd do a segment called Dark Oddity. Dark Oddity is basically the oddest things we can find in the paranormal realm, and we're gonna roll with it and just figure out what we can talk about and see how it goes. So I was doing some research and I found something pretty odd. There's a guy named Karl Tanzler who back in 1930 met a beautiful Cuban American girl while he was working at a hospital in Key West. Turns out our friend Karl, who went by about 6 different names, by the way.
Here's your first sign.
Count, Count Van Koslin.
George Karl Tanzler, Karl Tanzler von Korsel, Karl Tanzler with a K, Karl Tanzler with a C, Count Karl Tanzler von Kossel.
So his birth certificate,
You don't
his
trust
marriage
someone named
certificate,
Count.
his doctor's licenses, his signatures at these hospitals, and his death certificate all had a different name on it, of some variation of the several names we spoke
That's
about.
somehow impressive.
So, yeah. And we never actually could figure out why he had a job in a hospital, because we could not find any medical records to state that he had any degrees in medicine or anything like that. Most likely he was in the engineering field and he worked on the equipment, most likely.
He was a radiology
Technologist,
Okay.
yeah. So, technician, basically, yeah.
Right.
He turned the machine on for the guy who actually knew how to use it. So, in a nutshell.
Okay.
Folks,
So-
feel free to just phone in if you're a radiologist or a technician and you just want to give your
We'd like to hear
little
your
piece
thoughts
of
on this.
information to Rice here, feel free.
Well, this is back in 1930. I'm not talking about today's people.
Well,
So,
we're back in the basement again.
turns out, Karl had some type of premonition when he was a young man. And in the premonition, he states that a relative, a deceased relative of his, came to visit, and she was a countess, Van Kossen, or Klassen, whatever. Countess Van Klassen.
Kossel.
Kossel.
Kossel. Don't
Count-
get it. Don't get it.
wait,
Don't
adding
get
some more
confused with my
names.
family.
Sorry. No relation to the Corsons, who are a fine family, by the way. Very upstanding family. So, Karl has this vision where this countess that he's related to, who's deceased, comes to him and tells him about the love of his life that he will one day meet. And she describes her in detail. And Karl has this great vision, writes it down, and keeps it, in the back of his mind. And somewhere a decade or so later, he's working in this hospital in Key West. And this woman walks in. She has tuberculosis, which back then in the 1930 area, it's pretty much a death sentence. So he immediately sees her, falls head over heels for her. She is probably 30, 40 years younger than him. And there's no evidence to even suggest that she reciprocated any of these feelings.
Wait.
He was born in 1875, by the way. She was born in 1920.
Oh.
Oh,
She was born
okay.
in 1909.
1909. Close enough. He was easily 30 years her elder.
Okay.
Okay.
So he falls head over heels, promises to help cure her of tuberculosis. There's nothing to state that she actually reciprocated any of these feelings, but he goes out of his way to bring equipment from the hospital to her home, falls massively in love with her. She dies anyway. Turns out that some of the concoctions he was making probably were really good for her. Back then they were mixing, formaldehyde and, all these type of heavy
Right.
metals.
Kids smoke that now in their vapes today.
Oh, well, stupidity is, rampant in our society. So she dies. Karl's distraught, approaches the parents of her. I think her name was Elena.
Her name was Elena Milagro de Hoyos.
Yes, she went as Helen as well.
Mm-hmm.
And approached Helen's parents and asked if he could purchase the property to build a mausoleum in the local cemetery. And he built this elaborate above-ground mausoleum. They laid her to rest, and Karl would go to the mausoleum every day and sit there and sing songs and just pour his heart out to her. And she's no longer with us.
And if that's where the story ended, it wouldn't be on this show.
Exactly.
You
This
know,
is gonna
thank
go-
you. You saw my face. I'm like, I don't know what is happening.
I can't help that I
Okay.
know something's coming,
Thank
and I
you,
know
Cole.
it's going to be bad.
Okay.
So Karl,
I'm just trying to prep myself.
after a
mentally.
couple of years of her being in the
Like,
mausoleum,
could've been a nice
decides that he's gonna take her out of the
Oh,
mausoleum.
no.
So Cole brings her home, props her up in the bed, does a little microsurgery to repair any kind of rotting flesh and lack of eyeballs, and decides to keep her there for the next 7 years.
Oh my god!
Oh my God! It's
This is
Norman
a true
Bates.
That's so much
True
longer
story.
than I thought he was going to say.
100%
This
true.
is where Alfred Hitchcock
I just
got
said
the
Norman
idea.
Bates. I just said that.
on.
So now, not only does he keep her there
Oh, I
for
hear this
7
more.
years,
Yeah.
but as Joe
What, do you
said,
think they stayed quiet for 7 years?
he replaced her eyes with glass eyes. He
She has a thing about eyes. You can't talk about eyes.
Can't. I can't.
he filled her with rags so that she maintained the shape.
Her beautiful physique.
And as her face began to
Rot.
decompose or rot, Joe, I was trying to be nice here.
Yeah.
He
Not nice
replaced
about
it with silk dipped in wax
And he also used plaster of Paris, by the
and
way.
plaster of Paris. Yes,
Yes.
yes.
And when her hair totally fell out, he put a wig on. Story comes out 30 years later. So the autopsy, when they found her... Should I be really scared? So, turns out that some people got wind of this.
Well,
I
I'm
don't
sure
know
they
if it
did.
was the
It's
crazy
so funny.
odor coming out of the
I
bedroom.
was going to say downwind of it, actually.
Carl slept next to her for 7 years. So in 1940, when the family started to get wind that something was going on like this, they approached them. They called the authorities. They found the body in there. But unfortunately, at that time, the statute of limitations on desecrating a grave and doing harm to a corpse had expired. So they didn't charge him with anything.
Because apparently there's a statute of limitations
Yeah.
on something like
corpse,
that.
yeah.
Corpse is in the bed, but we're not going to charge you. So he probably had money, and stuff like that. So, it is what it is, but it's crazy. So the autopsy took place in 1940. They actually propped her up in the local funeral parlor, and like 6,000 people came to see her.
6,800 people.
Yes.
6,800
Yes.
people visited it.
And then they buried her in an unmarked grave so that
He could
Paul
find
cannot
it.
find her again.
Word.
Now, 1940, when the autopsy was done, flash forward to like 1972, to one of the doctors that did the autopsy said there was actually a vaginal tube placed in her.
Oh, I was hoping
Yeah.
it wasn't going there.
Oh,
Is
really?
that the oddity? The
The whole story, Cole. The whole story, Cole. From beginning to end
You know,
is the oddity.
Now
When
you
he
know how it
said,
feels to get yelled at like that.
when he said
That's how
she
he
was in
treats
the
me.
bed, I'm going, I'm not going there.
No.
I'm not going there in my
No.
head. I'm not, but apparently he
Yeah,
went there.
Ripley's, believe it or not, down in
Wow,
Florida,
that's-
Key West, set up a whole area showing the scene of her in the bed.
They did a reenactment?
They did a reenactment.
Oh, that's
You could actually visit the original tomb.
Wait, so
You
I
could
just
still-
want to say, this is where, and we're talking, we can't figure out why people are still persecuting witches. Really? I've lost faith in the human race.
You could actually visit the
They
actual
didn't persecute
mausoleum.
him.
You could still visit Karl Tanzler's lavatory because it's still there with the bedroom, with the dummy in the bed and him standing next to her to take pictures with.
He's still there.
You could actually do that.
Well, it's not.
Karl Tanzler died in 1952, by the way. Yeah.
Yes.
In Pasco County, Florida. So,
Yep.
now several
Some craziness going on.
movies
down in
and
Pasco County.
novels have been written touching the subject. There's been some shows on it. Some bands have actually wrote songs about this. Nothing mainstream, pop charts or anything like that, but
Go next Monday.
it's actually been
Such a
covered quite
gruesome
hard.
act.
We'll call the next song
Performed.
Ode to Elena.
Oh,
And
see?
nobody threw him in the water or poked him with pins or burned him at the stake.
No.
Nobody did that.
No.
Nobody
Actually-
did that
actually-
because the statute of limitations
And
ran out.
he was a man.
Because he said
They
he was
made
doing
him
it.
famous.
He was a
There
man.
you go.
He
He
wasn't
was a
a
man.
He wasn't a witch because he was a man.
He was a man.
And
Huh?
made him famous.
Yeah, there
Yep.
you go.
Because he said he was doing it out of love.
Right.
Folks, what have we become? Or what are we still?
Yeah, it's
Thank
not
you.
what we've become. We've been it for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Nicely said, Cole.
that's the wrap to that segment of Dark Oddity. I think it was a pretty good one, although the penis snatches of Peru were pretty good as well.
That was kind of
That was something we needed.
Yeah,